Dateline 202-40519. Just after 5:30 in the morning. I am never going to get around to posting the original pilot episode I recorded literally 1 calendar year ago tomorrow. Anyway, welcome to Miles in Transit, the podcast.
Welcome to Proto-Future, the only eco-Marxist model railroading podcast. And yes, astonishingly, people pay me to do this. This is Episode 5, Part 1, Inaugural Borealis, Day 1, Keystone, SEPTA, Airport Philosophy, and the Metric System for Sounds. In this episode, I motorcycle to the Harrisburg Airport, take a train to Philly, extensively explore PHL and MSP, and make a preliminary exploration of Minneapolis, philosophizing extensively along the way. So, a little bit of housekeeping before we start. This is the first time I've attempted anything of such massive scope, and I'll need your patience for a bit of it, but I do hope it pays off. To begin with, I've done my best to abide by all relevant privacy laws and journalistic ethics. I've obtained consent to record people for conversations and interviews, and when I couldn't, you'll only hear hopefully non-identifying small snippets for atmospheric flavor. If you recognize yourself and think I've misused or misrepresented you in these episodes, please contact me and I'll re-edit the episodes to remove the offending audio. As far as audio quality goes, I'm generally much happier after my lessons learned from PFP Episode 4, but this is still recording in the field, so audio won't always be perfect. The most notable irritant for me is the high gain of the microphone to pick up background audio in combination with the hauling around of a backpack in excess of 30 kilograms whilst speedrunning 3 major metro areas, which means that the final product is a bit breathier than I'd like. You'll notice the difference especially on day 2 once I dump half my stuff in the mansion. As for my production schedule, I have over 45 hours of audio to get through, and I'm editing as fast as I can. I'll break the trip into 4 episodes, 1 per day, and I'll likely release them every 2 weeks to speed things up a bit and keep with the topical news cycle. I can't help but notice that, as I record this, all the other YouTube-trained journalists are releasing their Borealis episodes. But my ride was on day 3 of the trip, which means that my release schedule will put it over a month behind the times. Well done there, G4. Well done. But patrons will still only be charged monthly, though. So, anyway, with all that, on to the show.
Okay, that took a little longer than expected. And admittedly, this is a first. Motorcycling to airport long-term parking. But, anything to reduce your emissions, right? My motorcycle gets better than twice the gas mileage of my car, and this is only a 4-day trip, 3 nights, so I really don't need that much in the way of materials. Everything can fit in a single, admittedly very large backpack, so there's no really good reason to take my car, and hence I'm here. Alright, step 1. How are we on time? Okay, according to my meticulous schedule, I am 45 minutes ahead of schedule. I can work with that.
Quickly hopping on the airport shuttle.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Presumably this will make catching an Uber a little easier, because since this is a wretched little American city, the next bus to downtown Harrisburg leaves at 5:15 a.m. tomorrow, because this is a Sunday. I hate this country. Ground transportation, rental cars, taxis, limos, hotels, shuttles, buses, is through the revolving door and up. So, let me get this straight. Ground transportation isn't on the ground. This entire place is straight out of 1982. Otis elevator. Elevator review. Not great. Ride sharing. Okay. Uber is 2 minutes away. I really don't like using rideshare. I would much rather use transit. Ride-sharing companies are capitalist parasites of poorly built cities. Tech bros throwing capacity at a problem and calling it innovation. And I never use delivery apps.
Good morning. Other side.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
So it probably behooves me to tell you what exactly it is I'm up to today. So I had always intended for this podcast to eventually turn into a series of trip diaries or trip logs or a bunch of very heavily Amtrak-based adventures.
Not completely, of course, but definitely a large part of it going forward would be me experiencing in real life the trains that I'm obsessing so much about.
But only after a while. And then Amtrak kind of called my bluff. So one of the many Minnesota things that I've been paying attention to recently is the TCMC, the Twin Cities Milwaukee-Chicago, or now it's been given an official name, the Borealis. Although I personally prefer the other alternative name it was given, the Great River, in reference to the Mississippi River that it would have spent a period of its length going along. But anyway, I was under the impression that it was going to be deployed sometime in September, but all of a sudden, about 20-odd days ago, Amtrak just dropped on its Instagram, oh yeah, by the way, it's coming May 21st. And it kind of happened with very little warning at all. And in kind of the same energy as I decided once to fly to France for a date and came back with a motorcycle, I decided, well, it's time to go to Minnesota. So, for a whirlwind, 3 nights, 4 days, the plan is, if everything goes successfully, as you already heard, motorcycle out to the Harrisburg airport. Now here I am at Harrisburg Station. Take the train to Philadelphia, fly from Philadelphia to Minneapolis, spend 1 day there, attend the inaugural Borealis ceremonies at St. Paul, and ride the first train from St. Paul to Chicago, spend about 2/3 of a day in Chicago, and then fly direct from O'Hare back to the Harrisburg airport. And then very late at night, hopefully motorcycle back to State College and don't get killed. All in time for lab meeting, which I'm leading very early in the morning on Thursday. So this entire time, I need to read, analyze, and make a PowerPoint on a scientific paper. This is going to be 4 very crazy days, flying by the seat of my pants. Astonishingly, this basically speed run is not something that's out of the norm for me. I've done speed running before, preeminently of Boston and Dallas. Boston, I think, January 2023 was the first time that I presented to some of my modern modeling anthology. It was at the Springfield, Massachusetts Amherst Railroad Society Railroad Hobby Show. I had only 47 hours in Boston, and that was the longest I think I've ever spent there. Previously, I'd only spent 97 minutes in Boston on an Amtrak layover. That's another story. And so I put that 97 minutes to very good use. I made sure to ride all of the green line, all of the red line, more than half of the orange line. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the blue line. And on at least 2 occasions, I was running for over 15 minutes, jogging, really, with a 40-pound backpack from the end of one segment of the Green Line, or a regional rail line, to the start of another segment of the Green Line in order to catch an earlier train departure, in order to have more time, in order to do more city exploration. Later that same summer, so this past summer, I think it was August 2023, I speed ran Dallas-Fort Worth at the NMRA National, where I presented my modern modeling anthology, I think like 8 times, and I managed to ride every single inch of passenger rail track in the entire DFW Metroplex. So this whole speed running thing, I've kind of optimized it. I'm kind of pretty good at it. It's what I do. And so now I get to do it again. Only 4 days, 4 airports, 2 cities, actually 4 cities, who am I kidding? Harrisburg, Philly, then Minneapolis, Chicago. Harrisburg doesn't really count as a city. It's a very odd little place. It is very Strode and car dependent. The downtown is okay. Actually, it's not even really the downtown. It's more like a few other close-in colonial, cute-ish neighborhoods to the northish sides. But outside of that, it's very Strode-ian, sprawly. Camp Hill and Mechanicsburg on the other side of the Susquehanna are very unattractive and unappealing. It's not a good place, not one that I would ever really want to live. But the one good thing I can say of it is that it does have the Keystone Corridor, one of a few non-northeast, extremely high-frequency corridors. I think it has 14 trains a day going back and forth between here and Philadelphia, which is very good, I would say. Completely electrified too, completely funded by the state of Pennsylvania, with a very nice, very beautiful old station. Actually, let's take a peek inside, see how that is. It's a brick. I think it was made by the Pennsylvania Railroad. It has a nice drop-off area. Marble floors, rich wood paneling. Next Keystone, 911 to Harrisburg, 932 New York. A tiny little transit news, actually. If I recall, I think this is the oldest continuously running transit newspaper store in the country. Maybe that's worth getting a breakfast at. Popping inside to the bridge over top the tracks. Kind of a bluish wood paneling with white ceilings. There are a few benches in here. Doesn't exactly strike me as modern. In addition to simple airplane logistics, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this particular setup of parking in Harrisburg and flying out of Philly was that I wanted to have a regular Amtrak train first in order to compare to the Borealis. The Keystone Corridor, of course, being one of the most heavily traveled outside of the Northeast Corridor. There are 2 Amfleet train sets with Siemens Sprinter locomotives sitting on tracks 2 and 3, locomotives pointed towards Philadelphia, and then on track 5 there is a lone P-42 Genesis unit. They've always had Genesis staged here. I never did understand why. I'm assuming it was just some sort of emergency rescue locomotive, but I never understood why they just couldn't send one from Philadelphia.
Anyway, with an hour until departure, I decided to pop into Transit News for some breakfast, and let me tell you, it felt every one of those 200 years old, and then sit down and finish reading the paper for lab meeting later that week.
Please be advised that if and only if checked baggage is available for your train, it is recommended you take your bags to Amtrak's baggage department. Each passenger is allowed to check up to 2 pieces of luggage not to exceed 50 pounds each. All This is a boarding call for Amtrak Keystone Service Train 664, en route to New York Penn Station. Passengers should proceed to Gate 3 track. Thank you for choosing Amtrak.
And we're boarding.
On the transfer line, track out until the past service time delayed to November 21st. Keystone service between Lancaster and Harrisburg will be replaced by buses from approximately 8 a.m. through 4 p.m. Monday to Thursday. Schedule adjustments Friday through Sunday, as well as
What do you know? If I'm correct, the last car is an old Metroliner turned into a cab car. And then there is a GG1 and an old wooden Pennsylvania Railroad caboose sitting on an unused track. Mail fleets.
Departure was precisely on the advertised.
Good morning. Here. Would you like to hear a railroad joke?
Okay.
So, a conductor loses their pocket watch one day and needs to tell the time. So they radio into dispatch. And dispatch says, "Which railroad do you work for?" And the conductor is confused and says, "Why does that matter?" And dispatch says, "Well, it changes depending on which railroad. For example, if you work for Union Pacific, it's 2 p.m. But if you work for BNSF, it's 1400. And the conductor says, "Well, I don't work for either of them. I work for Amtrak." And dispatch says, "Well, it's Tuesday."
Sounds about right.
I heard that one from an Amtrak conductor for Amtrak Cascades, and she herself heard it from an FRA inspector.
Oh, really?
Yep. So, that's how you know it's true. I had a lovely conversation with the conductor. I told her my traditional Amtrak joke. Apparently, she was on the trip that picked up the Acellas that send them out west for testing, and she used to run the long-distance trains out of Toledo, but now she apparently much prefers here. And we were, of course, commenting upon the new Acellas, the Alston Ophelia Liberties, and how problematic they are, and how leaky they are. And then, I swear to you, just out of the comedic timing, the Metroliner cab car that we were in, all of a sudden, the air conditioning unit in the ceiling started leaking massive amounts of water, just pouring down from the ceiling onto her seat and all over her. So, I guess maybe we were too quick to criticize the Ophelia Liberties. Because even if they're leaky, that only happens in rain. Here, on a perfectly dry day, we're still being rained on inside.
Here was the moment.
I will... Oh my. That's interesting.
I cannot wait until Amtrak gets its new train sets, particularly the Aero train sets. You know, something that was built within my lifetime. Anyway.
Fascinating, amazing person. Back to work. Apparently it's a sold-out train going into Philly. Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. Not too far away from Hershey, but also home of another chocolatier, Mars, makers of Snickers and probably more notably M&M's. You can smell the chocolate. Heading through the beautiful pastoral landscapes of the Piedmont or Great Valley region of the Pennsylvania Dutch countryside. Very low rolling hills. Farmland as far as the eye can see. And I believe we are passing right by the Strasburg Railroad right now. Yep, this is Paradise, Pennsylvania. Now it seems we've entered into SEPTA territory because we just passed a station that we did not stop at. That did not appear to be an Amtrak station.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I do need all personal items removed from that empty seat next to you. Someone's already paid for that seat, so I do need that seat made available. 100 passengers still to get on this train before Philadelphia. Please remove all items from the empty seat next to you.
Which station is this that is causing so much boarding consternation? Do you want another train joke?
Oh boy, what you got?
How do leprechauns control their train movements?
I don't know.
With dwarf signals.
I might share that with somebody in the crew room today. You never know. Because the cells will be out that window in a minute.
Oh, thank you.
This station stops Philadelphia, 30th Street Station. All doors should open.
Okay, those are admittedly extremely attractive, albeit very stationary machines. There are 5 currently. Oh, the new Fancy 42. I just got my mountain charges in the other day. Literally 2 days ago. Here. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good one, you're welcome.
You too. I believe they lose power there because they need to switch ends of the train for travel to New York. The Keystone enters 30th Street Station in the southbound direction, but then needs to leave going northbound. I have mixed feelings about Philadelphia, but this station is a pretty good one. You have a gigantic, cavernous train hall that goes up, God's what, I don't know, 10 stories. Beautiful tan marble, I believe. Egyptian columns. Neoclassical or possibly even neo-rococo trim. It's not the largest train hall in the country. Not even necessarily the best, but it is a very, very good one. Its food options are definitely lacking, and it is in dire need of better connections to the regional rail, the subway, the streetcars, the rest of the city. It being 30th Street Station, it's at least 30 blocks away from Center City, and so that makes the regional and sub-regional connections all that much more important. But at least you have yourself a grand train station. That's a win. Another interesting thing about it is that its tracks are actually in a cross section. The intercity trains are below grade, going north-south. The regional rail are above grade, going east-west. So heading away from the main hall to SEPTA, the Society for the Elimination of Passenger Trains in America. Let's see. Airport. 12? The next train to the airport is in 40 minutes? And it leaves every hour? What the hell? Oh, Philadelphia, I hate you. Okay. Well, what do I do with myself for 40 minutes? Okay, well, I've never actually gone through the Center City Tunnel, so maybe we do that. Paper ticket. Which one is... I just want to catch the first train. Eastbound doesn't work. Reading bound, maybe? So, something that I actually think I will discuss in my next railroad history episode. Pennsylvania used to have 2 major commuter rail operators. The Pennsylvania Railroad, God, it's been a long time since I've been here, which operated, obviously, 30th Street Station, and then Suburban Station, basically the southern half of the Northeast Corridor as we know it. Then you had the Reading Railroad, which operated a bunch of not quite duplicative, but very, very similar lines out of Reading Terminal, made famous today for the Reading Terminal Market. So in the 1980s, when the commuter rail operations were nationalized, since you had these two major stub-ended terminals, SEPTA and the city came up with this brilliant idea. Why not just connect these two terminals with a comparatively short couple-kilometer tunnel from Reading Terminal to Suburban Station, and then through-run all the Reading trains back out of the city onto the Pennsylvania commuter trains. Basically turn it into a European or specifically German-style Stadtbahn, S-Bahn they're called, a city train. It's one of two styles of basically better commuter rail. So American commuter rail is the bad way of doing it. It's you have a bunch of trains that fleet unidirectionally in the city, in the morning, out in the evening. For the 9 to 5 commuter, that is a bad way of doing it. That is garbage, and hopefully they're all going away forever. Then the other ways of doing it, the Stadtbahn is the SEPTA way. You route all of your trains in through a center city tunnel, and then this removes a lot of the problems of singular stub terminals, where you then have to have massive, expensive yards that you have to shuttle empty trains into and out of. Instead, each incoming train is then also an outbound train, and you only have to worry about restaging trains at the very far ends of railroad lines in the suburbs where land is a lot cheaper to build a yard. The other style is the French style, which is the RER, which I don't speak French, I don't know what that is an acronym for. And that's to kind of turn your commuter rail lines into a diffuse subway-style network when it is in downtown. And both of those have merits, and both of those would have worked very well if Philadelphia actually operated it properly. So, as you literally just encountered, this is the airport train, quite possibly the singularly most important transit route of any variety in the entire city. You're linking Center City, the downtown as it's called here, with the airport, the most major multimodal hub, and also one of the largest single employers, on a weekend day, a major travel day, and the best you can muster is hourly service linking major international airport with the single densest piece of railroad track in the entire Western Hemisphere. That's frankly pathetic. To my understanding, SEPTA has had a lot of issues with their unions, and their trains are overstaffed, when instead they should not necessarily have layoffs, but instead they should keep exactly as many people as they already have and then just run 2 or 3 times the number of trains. They also need to have all of their stations have high-level platforms. I mean, literally, I'm standing at a 6-track station right now. Each track can host a train every 3 minutes peak. And I have not seen a single train go by on any of them in the entire, how many minutes have I been here? This is shameful. They have the capacity, they have the infrastructure, but, and this is one of the things that I hate so much about the Northeast, it's that they've let the infrastructure decay so badly. In many cases, I'd almost prefer a West Coast city, which in many ways those are largely more car-dependent and sun-belty, but they use what they have so much better, and you get so much less of a sense of frustration. Like, there's less of a sense of it could be better, because you're not staring at the thing that is already there that could be better, were it not for idiot bureaucracy and Robert Moses. Okay, Philadelphia close rand. There are, on all of these platforms, like, cumulatively 100 people just waiting here, waiting for the train that's not coming. Looking to the north, you can see the train sets again.
The Acela to Avail Your Liberties.
There are only 5, which, as I recall from the last time I was here, there were more, at least one more. Oh, and one of the old HHP8s. I think they're being turned into cab cars now, the fact that, and a few private cars too. That's interesting. Oh, finally. So I'll just hopscotch, train by train, one station at a time.
Schedule 11, 30, local 2, Warman, next to arrive on track 5.
These are, I think, Silverliner cars. I think they're from the 1970s. I don't know if Bud built them, but it definitely looks it. Very boxy, ribbed aluminum. Not my personal favorite style. Oh, no, that's a cab, so I have to go up. I'm only loading the front 2 cars.
1 minute start. On it. It's time to your left. Suburban station, the next stop.
Thank you. Now we're in a tunnel.
Suburban station, let's stop.
So I've been to 30th Street Station before, the SEPTA platforms. I have never been here.
That track can walk up, okay?
Thank you. Oh, this is interesting. Two-tone, teal lower wall, white above, brown tile on the floor. Not quite as attractive as I was hoping. The exterior of the building is a little bit more. Oh, it's only 4 tracks. Well, that's why we went through the whole thingy. Oh, I get it. It's all eastbound, westbound-ish now. Oh no! So there are platforms over there. Then how do I get to them? Oh. So it looks like one of those platforms is Spanish Solution. Track 0! That's what the departure board says. That is the strangest thing. So, the track in front of me, it is a single track with platforms on both sides. So I'm assuming that this is what is called a Spanish Solution platform, where... Oh, and it looks like there's a track on the other side of that track 0 platform. So I'm assuming that that is a discharge-only platform. So that's for, I don't know, rush hour. And I'm guessing that those stairways are exit-only. That they allow you to exit, but only outside of the fare area. Oh, yeah. And it looks like there might be another one, too, on the other side of the other main platform. So there are 2 main waiting platforms. One, again, for lack of a better phrase, eastbound, one westbound. But then the other ones are just for rush hour. That's very interesting. Makes it hell if you're a reverse commuter, but... frankly, this is a very underwhelming station. Well, I guess this is technically the original state. Well, not the original. That was Broad Street Station. But this is the suburban station, is the main station that the Pennsylvania Railroad operated its suburban trains out of. So I guess this is a station that has an excuse for being old and dingy. Because, in fact, it is very old. Still, though, it would be nice if they put money into making it nicer and more remotely modern.
Okay, so skipping many steps and complaints here, I tried to catch another train westbound so that I could explore Jefferson Station, but because SEPTA has absolutely garbage frequencies, I couldn't. So I ended up twiddling my thumbs at Suburban Station for almost 20 minutes waiting for literally any train to arrive, and then I eventually had to call it quits and then just take the next airport train. I mean, it's one thing to have hourly service on individual lines, that's bad enough. I'm looking at you, Metra. But this is an interlined segment where 13 different routes come onto the exact same tracks. If each one of those 13 different routes had hourly service, that means that there should have been a train through the downtown tunnel every 4.5 minutes. I mean, come on, SEPTA.
Okay, well, from Suburban Station, the airport line train leaves in only 10 minutes. That is cutting it very close. You know what? That's not going to happen. There's no way that I can travel from one station to another in 6 minutes and then even dash across the platform. Let's scoot over to the other platform and see how the airport line is doing for on-time performance. So, oddly enough, not only was I stymied in getting to the airport sooner by the fact that the trains came so infrequently, I was also stymied in my backup exploration by the fact that the other trains came so infrequently. If I just had more frequent departures of literally any other train on this entire Center City tunnel, I could have hopscotched at least one more station, maybe two, all the way up to maybe Temple, in order to catch the airport train. But the fact that I was waiting there at 30th Street Station for 10 minutes? For a single train to come across all 6 tracks. What the hell, Philly? I guess maybe I'm too harsh on Philly. At least they have an train, which is more than I can say for Harrisburg between the airport and downtown. Or even a bus.
Schedule 11:55. Local 2, airport. Next to arrive on track 3.
Hot rail.
This stop, William H. Gray, the 30th Street Station.
Oh me, oh my. There are a quadrillion people getting ready to board. In part because the train comes only once every half millennium.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the train to the airport. This is the airport train. Next stop, Penn Medicine Station.
Next stop, Penn Medicine Station, a wheelchair-accessible station.
The fact that they need to specify which stations are wheelchair accessible is a serious problem. A station should be designated as wheelchair accessible by the word station.
Next stop, Eastwick. This is a wheelchair-accessible station.
Bullshit.
Tickets, please.
If I am correct, we're right next to the Northeast Corridor, but we're just parting it now for a flyover in order to take our own private route to the airport.
The Philadelphia International Airport, Terminals A through F, will be the last 4 stops on this train.
Thank you. Interesting. So it seems that they have different platforms for arrivals and departures. Oh, would you look at that TSA pre-check? That was the shortest and least eventful time I've ever had in airport security in my life. And that includes the time I was transferring through Atlanta and wanted to ride the air train end to end, and I didn't know that there was a station on the air train that went out of airside, and a TSA agent came through saying, "You're in landside. Please exit the train and go to the ground. If you want to go back into the airport, you have to go back through security." Thank the gods for TSA pre-check. Inside of 10 minutes, I was airside, landside, and airside again. But in this case, it was not 3 minutes from landside to airside. So, it is 12:26. My plane doesn't depart until 15:10. So that gives me actually oodles of time, which is very useful, because I do like trains. But another thing that I do particularly happen to enjoy is, oddly enough, airports. and also to another extent, theme parks. And to an even lesser extent, we'll go with large malls, not dead malls. I like design, engineering, just things that don't have anything to do with cars. And ideally things that are sustainable, genuine, respectful of local culture, and climate friendly. So, whenever I go through an airport, if I have the time, which I have built through my schedule, I like to try and go through the entire airport. A lot of people don't like flying, and yes, I would agree. I like everything about flying except the flying part. But airports themselves, they are in fact ports of call, ports of entry. They are places where you're guaranteed that every single person that you see has something interesting that they are doing, that they are up to. The places themselves, they are designed for flow of people. They are designed to have third places, places where you can sit, chill out, veg out. They usually have interesting restaurants, little samplings of local culture, if largely corporatized through single vendors. And then they are also usually very large and interesting places that have grown organically over time. And it's very interesting to see from a large-scale meta-engineering perspective how they have been wedged together to grow over that period of time. So what I try to do in exploring airports is I try to make at least line-of-sight eye contact with every single gate. I have already done this with the Philadelphia airport before. In fact, it was one of the first airports I was ever able to do it with. Way back in January 2018, on an absolutely apocalyptic layover of over 8 hours, during my graduate school interview weekend, no less, flying from New York to State College, Pennsylvania. That's a whole story in and of itself for another time. But when I had so much extra time, what else was there to do except walk the entire airport? And so that's what I did. And my goodness, that started a new hobby. So now I have on my reminders app a list of all of the major airports in the entire country, and then a few even more major ones smattered around the world that are on my grand old bucket list. And whenever I have the chance, I try to divert myself to go to them. And ideally, I give myself a layover of about 2.5 to 3.5 hours, which is about how long it takes to explore airports. Currently, the biggest one, I would say, in terms of exploration time, was Dallas-Fort Worth. That took about 3.5 hours.
Longer.
Surprisingly, than Atlanta. That really was unexpected. But I think that's just simply because Atlanta is a major transfer hub and it's designed for getting around faster. DFW, on the other hand, well, it's Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas. It's more spread out. I liked DFW Terminal 3, and not much else there. Atlanta, unexpectedly, not a really good place to hang out. It being kind of built on the spine of the plane train, all of the nodes of all of the terminals had a bunch of large food courts that were always overpacked, and then all of the areas closer to the gates, not quite so much. So your options were too many crowds or too few crowds and no food. Okay, I've made it to the end of A gates. I see Alpha 24. So, my plane is in Delta gates. That's the one problem. It is a Delta brand airline, so that kind of mucks up the NATO phonetic alphabet there. It is in Delta 14. And again, I have, would you look at that, over 2.5 hours. I had scheduled 45 minutes to go through security, because normally checking in is difficult. I normally can't do it on my phone because my ID and passport have the gender marker set to X, and normally that is not recognized, especially on international flights, either by the app or by the automatic self-check-in kiosks. So that usually forces me to go for a manual check-in by a gate agent.
White boy's first brush with structural inequality.
This time, I'm assuming because it's a domestic flight from blue state to blue state, it was recognized, so I could quickly, automatically check in on my app, and then, of course, TSA pre-check, flying through pun inadvertently, but we'll say retroactively intended, security. That solved all of that. So now I now have so much time. Heading back through Alpha Gates now. It's a somewhat newer, more modern terminal, but it is somewhat dead. I guess that is because it is midday on a Sunday, so... And it's a bit sterile. It kind of gives off mid-2010s vibes. It's also a bit looming. The international arrivals double sterile area is over top for a lot of the distance, which means that there's no natural light. For those who don't know, a lot of planes coming in from overseas, they have a second sterile area on top of regular airport security, where once you deboard the plane, you then have to go through this hallway that's usually one level above the main departure area, and then that takes you to some sort of centralized customs area, and then only once you have gone through customs are you then allowed to enter the rest of the airport. And so, if you know what you're looking for, you can usually find the architecture of this hallway snaking its way around one level above the main airport. I do like the modern trend, though, of making the walls of this customs sterile area glass, which makes it so much more airy. But if you have a narrow hallway, and the customs area is right on top of you, well, that doesn't do you any good, does it? There is a Lego vending machine. Oh my goodness, with a motorcycle too. I'm half tempted to get one for myself. That's hilarious. There's a Lego Liberty Bell. Alpha 15. Alpha gates are really long. I have a friend who's a part of the A Modeler's Life podcast group put on by Lionel Strang, and she's a flight attendant for Southwest. And I always fantasize that when I'm going through these airports, that I'm going to run across her someday. That would be pretty fun. Though I can imagine that if you work for an airline, that there's a little bit less of a mystique to the whole airport thing. Well, I don't know. I mean, of course, flying, the actual act of wheels up, wheels down, is just absolutely miserable for everybody these days. But airports, again, there's always a little bit of excitement to it. It's kind of a little bit of what train travel used to be, and still could be. Just past the American Express Centurion Airport Lounge. I do not like airport lounges. Those are the white picket fences of airports, for people who like to wall themselves off. I much prefer to be among the masses, to feel the beating heart of the airport and how it flows. This is definitely the older section of Alpha. Much less natural light. A skylight. How kind of them. I personally enjoyed Char de Gaulle, where they took all of their shops and put them in the center and then sunk them into the ground, at least in the newer terminals. That was fantastic. And it made the main level seating area so much more light and airy and beautiful. You could even observe the sunrise on the entire horizon. And then, of course, it turned it into a greenhouse during the main portion of the day, but that's modern architecture for you. It's better than being trapped in a literal cubicle like this, but oh well. They have a bar for Yard's Brewing Company, a famous Philly establishment. Okay. Alpha 12, Alpha 10, Alpha 8, and Alpha 6. How ironic. Alpha 6 is going to Chicago O'Hare. I have a rule that I'm not done with a terminal unless I hit carpet at the end of it. That's generally where you can say, this is the end of the extent of the main walkway. One of the first times I did this at Washington Dulles, I think I managed to walk just about 30 kilometers indoors all in one day. At Washington Dulles and another airport. I think that was also Atlanta, but it could have been another one. I've obviously been doing this for years. I don't keep a formal record of which airports I've been to and in which order. It's more a matter of my own personal bucket list and which ones I want to go to, and then which memories I have of doing which. I could also always probably reconstruct it from my calendar, but this isn't a dick measuring contest. This is more for my own personal edification and worldliness. One thing I will say about Philly, it does lack a people mover, which is quite notable, especially seeing how long it is.
From Alpha 26 to Foxtrot 39 is a half-hour walk and a trip of 2,100 meters, which is insane.
It has to be at least 2 kilometers, possibly even more.
Wow, I'm really good.
I am young and physically fit, and I have a lot of time. Other people are older, possibly disabled or otherwise impaired, or are trying to make a connection. They do have a ground shuttle, but as we all know, trains are better. Literally, it is a scientifically proven fact that per passenger seat, trains are cheaper to construct, operate, and maintain. Per passenger, on average, trains are cheaper to construct, operate, and maintain. And just in general, people prefer trains. People will go out of their way. They will walk further. They will build more of their schedule around it, even in comparison to other types of permanent infrastructure like bus rapid transit. Just look at the Cleveland Health Line and how that has so heinously degraded. A good BRT can still slide very far in terms of maintenance and become a very bad BRT very quickly. That looks to be the most boring airport bar I think I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I could imagine a worse one if I tried. This, on the other hand, Love Grill. At least they're trying. It's always funny to me, the new trend, or newer, of how airport bars, how basically every airport restaurant also has a quick grab and go section. Nice quieter place by Bravo 6. Independence Prime smells and looks amazing. Ooh, real smoke-fired something. But heavy ventilation in the main hallway, understandably. Architecturally fantastic, though. Popping down to Germantown Beer Garden. Bravo Gates is definitely a hell of a lot more busy than Alpha. If I'm correct, Philly's an American Airlines hub. Yeah, now that I think about it, American does not like airports that have people movers.
Charlotte, North Carolina, no people mover. Chicago O'Hare, no people mover. Dallas Fort Worth does have a people mover. Los Angeles, no people mover. Miami technically has a people mover, I think. New York JFK, no people mover. New York LaGuardia, no people mover. Philadelphia, no people mover. Phoenix Sky Harbor, technically a landside people mover. Washington DCA, no people mover. So, tisk tisk, American, you're not appealing to the train market.
Chicago doesn't have a people mover? O'Hara, I mean. Not Midway. I have not been to Midway. That's another one on my list. I have also not been to O'Hare Terminal 5. Pin in that for later. Well, this is quite possibly the most anticlimactic terminal end I think I've ever seen. Ew. Okay, let me find some carpet. Okay, Bravo completed. Heading back up the ramp. More of those fantastic smells. I wonder where that ventilation is coming from. It is very well hidden. Okay, there is a shortcut moving walkway, but I think I've taken that before, so instead I shall walk through the clearly duty-free, tourist-aimed gift shop alley. That is one thing I don't understand about airports. Just all of the commerce. It's like you're traveling. You're already weighed down with so much stuff. Other than a place to buy food and drink, if for the moment, why would you want to buy things? I mean, yeah, no taxes, but who cares? Oh yeah, so to that end, JFK, do not like. I just largely hate everything about New York, except maybe a few tiny parts of Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and I did kind of like the Bronx. Hot take. That's one of my favorite boroughs. Less inauthentic. Charlie Gates. Going down again in Charlie.
Prospect BSA to
It splits into a T.
BSA to Charlie 20.
See, NATO phonetic alphabet. Going to Phoenix, Arizona, and the person approaching it is in a full business suit with flip-flops. How Scottsdale. Speedrunning LAX was also very interesting. I decided that it was easiest to start at one end, Charlie 27 and 29, so that means I'm done with Charlie Gates. And so, since it's shaped like a U, I started at one end, where my departing flight was nearest, and I exited security, hopped across the U through a parking garage, and entered security on the other side, going all the way back through the airport. That was painful. I had blisters by the time I was done. Going back up through Main Charlie. Maybe my obsession with crowds and crowded places came from growing up near Disney World. I'm from Central Florida. Crowd control runs through my veins. I, of course, hate Florida. I am young and trans and queer, and the state is getting older and more suburban and more homophobic and transphobic, and elected Ron DeSantis. Okay, found the passageway to Delta Gates. It was a little bit hidden around the corner of a restaurant. Who makes these moving walkways? Kone? Who is it that does the elevator reviews? Miles in Transit, I think? I thought I was the only one who cared about elevators.
For the record, as far as elevator reviews go, I was originally not a fan of Kone because I thought that their buttons were chintzy, plasticky, and would not hold up well, but I've since come around to them because I consider that their products are a little bit more innovative and up with the times, especially in comparison to Otis.
Delta Gates. This is where I'm departing from. And oh my goodness, this is so much quieter and more drab. It is clear who really actually cares about this airport. American is really pulling out all the stops. Almost all white walls, very small windows, very little natural light, very low ceilings. That weird cast, shiny faux marble concrete that is just so emblematic of the late 90s. Definitely no interesting breweries. Now we're getting the ubiquitous ramp down, but this time it's actually welcome because it increases the ceiling height. God, there really is nothing here. Okay, there is one restaurant, Bar Simon Tap House at the end. Would you look at that? Delta 14 Gates to Minneapolis at 1510. DL 2897, which I believe is me. So at least there is one restaurant down here. Although, I still might stick closer to the main drag and get better options. The sign says, "Do not bring your firearm through the checkpoint." Very useful to know after you've already gone through the checkpoint. Approaching Echo Gates. Very, very busy. This is a little bit more industrial. Exposed concrete beam girder ceiling. It gives off very early, mid-2000s skater parking garage vibes. I almost kind of like it because it isn't trying to be anything more than a shitty airport terminal, as opposed to the other shitty airport terminals, which are pretending that they are an aesthetically nice place. Beauty doesn't come from pompous garnish. So I am definitely not a fan of Victorian styles or Neo-Rococo. I am much more of a pragmatic utilitarian, almost modernist.
Postmodernist, I'd say.
Where beauty comes from leaning into the thingness of a thing. Now, of course, everything can be overdone, and we saw that with brutalism, but even then, well, that's another podcast. Making it to the end of Echo Gates. Oh, this is interesting. It ends in a very nice, bright, airy atrium, circular. Oh, and a very attractive bar to the right. Good Luck Pizza Company. And it has windows and a roof that slopes up to the atrium. Oh, and it's interesting how it kind of auditorily traps the noise. That's fascinating. Echo 16, Echo 17, Echo 15. Yeah, I've reached the end of Echo Gates. Okay, so far, Echo is a sleeper hit. Delta can go fuck itself. But I imagine Foxtrot, being the regional flights, will be the runt of the litter. God, I almost imagine that this airport terminal in, I don't know, 50 years would be put on the National Register of Historic Places for whatever style of architecture this is, as some sort of massively historical element of the mid-2000s. It's so strange, because as somebody who lived through that time period, and oddly enough has no nostalgia at all for it, I'm very familiar with these vibes and aesthetics, but I haven't recognized them as vibes and aesthetics until now, when they've already trickled away and disappeared, and now I see them again and I can point to them. I just don't have the words to describe what they are. I first got interested in architecture when I moved to the East Coast, and I started seeing all of these weird shapes of old houses, and I wanted to describe them for my friends and family back home. So I found a small pamphlet at some sort of small, I think it was like Rhode Island or Connecticut Historical Society. It explained it to me. It's like, that's a Federalist style house. That's a gambrel roof. That's clapboard siding. And from there, it was off to the races. Oh goodness. The hallway to Foxtrot is dreadfully small and hidden. This is pathetic. The hallway is less than 1.5 meters wide in areas. Dear gods, you can hear how desolate it is. This is creepy. Oh, and would you look at that? The end of the airport regional rail. With not a train in sight. They run it so infrequently, there isn't even a train here on layover. No SEPTA. I still have about 2 hours until the plane departs. I had no idea I was ever going to get through the airport security and check-in this quickly. If I had known that, I would have devoted more time to explore the Center City Tunnel, but I can do that another day. Oh, so now we're going down to ground level. Well, I was too quick to diss Foxtrot Gates. It is very modern, very bright, very tall, fantastic windows.
Attention in the terminal, this is the final boarding call for American Airlines bus service 6575 to Allentown to gate F8. Once again, this is the final boarding call for
Allentown? We're in Philadelphia. You should be able to take the train. Oh wait, there isn't one. I hate America.
5759 to Bangor.
Okay, I forgot about this. So this is what's called the hub. Oh yeah, this is actually an inter-terminal bus bay. There are a lot of airport professionals here. Pilots, TSA agents, ground crew. This is kind of like a hidden gem, a quieter area that I guess they all like to hang out. This has bus connections to terminals Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. If this was a bus terminal or a transit center, it would be truly one of the most modern and interesting ones I think I've ever been to. I totally forgot about this. I'm glad I'm here. This is actually really cool and amazing. I kind of like it. So, given that this is in fact an American Airlines hub, I'm guessing this is how it runs. This is the regional hopscotch hub area, Foxtrot Gates. So if you come in from a puddle jumper, you can come to this transit center hub and catch a bus directly to the terminal where your main flight is leaving from, rather than needing to go to the egregious walk that I did, or vice versa. If you're coming in from a main flight, you can take a bus direct to your connecting flight here in Foxtrot Gates. That's actually very interesting. I kind of like that a lot. Huh. Fascinating.
Still, a train would be better because, as I found out later while taking it, it was limited to an excruciatingly slow 10 miles per hour while on the ground with mixed freight traffic, but at least it simplifies the transfer process for various passengers.
So it's kind of a Y-shaped terminal with obviously the hub at the nexus. Foxtrot 18, 2022, 19, 21, 23.
Again, this is the final boarding call for American Flight 5731 to State College, service navigate F39.
Wait, what? To State College? That's where I came from. Literally this morning. Oh, what do you know? Small world. Okay, back in the hub? I mean, yeah, aesthetically, I think this area, Foxtrot Hub, might be my favorite part of the airport. What? My goodness.
It seems that there were some very late connecting flights because there were about 6 or 7 final boarding calls for the flight to State College.
Once again, it's the final boarding call for American Eagle Flight 5731 with service to State College through gate F39.
Guess this is becoming more jet lag, the podcast. Oh wait, they already have that. It's called The Layover. You should subscribe on Nebula. Although, I don't know. I'm kind of more of the Alan Fisher opinion of Sam Denby. Look up Twitter spats. Would you look at that? That's the flight to State College. Just about ready to push back. Okay. With Foxtrot 39, I have in fact made it to all of the gates of the Philadelphia airport in all of the terminals. And it seems I did so in just about 67 minutes, which is, I would say, on the lower end of my airport explorations, which means that this is a pretty small one. So, I still have at least 90 minutes left until the plane departs. Shave off a few extra minutes for being at the gate and boarding. That still gives me an hour.
This is the final boarding call for American Airlines Bus 6579 to Atlantic City through gate F8.
Side note, an American Airlines bus departing from an airport gate. That's a new one to me. But, you know, it's almost as if there's already another way to get from Philadelphia to Atlantic City. In fact, I think somebody already has a better, more environmentally friendly way to do that. You know, from a more central location, in fact. Somebody should look into that. Huh.
So I think I will try to find a nice place to hole up. Maybe have a medium light lunch and probably somewhere in the vicinity of Charlie Delta gates. And then, of course, I will board the flight to Minneapolis. Yeah. Another airport speed run under my belt.
Sitting at the airport restaurant, I had a surprisingly fascinating conversation with somebody from Colorado Springs about Colorado politics and Lauren Boebert. And then on the plane, I had a similarly interesting conversation with somebody from Portland about the politics of the Portland Police Department. Shout out to the CityCast Network by Slate and David Plotz for my ability to hold my own in political discussions about places I have never actually ever lived in. I have listened to almost every single episode of all 11 CityCasts. I heartily recommend them if you live in any of their cities. They're really good.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you're exiting the aircraft, please watch your step. It is a bit of a step down, so please be sure that you are watching your step as you're exiting and take your time. Thank you.
Oh yeah, and when the plane arrived into Minneapolis, the strangest thing happened. When the fasten seatbelt sign went off, nobody bolted upright into the aisle in order to get their luggage and start the competitive race to exit the plane. What the fuck is up with this Minnesota nice? It's psychopathic.
27 Foxtrot, it was a pleasure. I wish you many walkable streets.
Have a great night. Watch your step on the way out.
Be careful of your step, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Careful of your step. Bye.
Excuse me? Delta, it was a pleasure talking with you. I wish you best of luck with your railway car.
Likewise.
Now here's the interesting thing about exploring airports. Whenever I exit a plane, everybody takes a turn towards the baggage claim. I usually turn the opposite way, heading deeper into whichever terminal I come into. Unfortunately, there's a second, much smaller terminal for some budget and overseas carriers that I will not be making it to today. It does not seem like there's any airside interterminal transfer, which is always awful and very poor form. But seeing as Terminal 2 is very small, like really I think less than 20 gates, it may really only even be a dozen, it doesn't seem that I'll be missing much. But it is still technically incomplete. So I guess someday I will have to find my way back here. Foxtrot 14, 16, 15. I've reached the end of Foxtrot gates. Albuquerque, Sacramento, Charlotte, Dublin. Low ceilings, but silver walls and dark carpet make it less offensive than the garish white sheetrock of Philadelphia Delta gates. It's very overcast outside. An uncharacteristically soft landing. A lot of my flights in the past 5 or 6 years have had very rough touchdowns. This was a nice departure from that. Now the thing about MSP is that it's a little bit more of a confusing labyrinthine airport. Philadelphia was more linearly and logically laid out. Just technically a line with individual terminals branching off of it. Here though, it's kind of a square, and it has 2 different non-connecting airport trams that I'm going to have to try and navigate. I meticulously studied the airport map on the Delta Seatback media system, so I think I've figured out a route that will roughly
optimize
my exploration. Heading to the right to Gulf Gates. Oh yeah, that's one of the interesting things too. Since I'm really only traveling with what's on my back, and I don't have any bags waiting for me at the baggage claim, I can technically stay airside as long as I want. Okay, this is very interesting. A very modern and beautiful terminal. Very tall, not much natural light, but very illuminated. Gulf Gates 1 to 8. Oh wait, is this a commerce corridor? And then there's a shadow corridor of gates behind it. Okay, I get it. A very attractive, if overly stylized, bar called Mimosa. It kind of looks like Mrs. C's of C's Candies started serving cocktails. Golf 1, 2, 3. Though, as bright as it is, and as attractive as the architecture is, it's still ceiling tiles. Small, faraway windows and low ceilings. That wasn't much. Golf 6 Bravo and Golf 6 Alpha. Tiny little cul-de-sac. Heading back to the Commerce Corridor. Or, as we're seeing, it's called the Food Hall. You can see out the window. Can't tell if that's arrivals or departures. I think it's departures. Oh my, that's a very steep roadway, and a large parking structure in the center of it. Golf 9 and 10. It looks like they have another cul-de-sac. Golf 13, 12, and there's Golf 11. Another cul-de-sac, Golfs 14 to 16. Interesting way of doing it. Clustering the gates. Can't say I've ever quite seen something like this before. I mean, it makes intuitive sense, but I've never seen it quite to this extreme. Mill City Tavern has an outpost. Oh, and we are at the end of Golf Gates, Golf 18 to 22, with a very large, beautiful, and vertical roundel. I need to find myself some carpet. Looks like there's a second level. I'm assuming, Delta Sky Club, yes. Okay. Now I'm going to cut across one leg of the square.
Yeah, I'll just skip over this bit for you. The airport does have two people movers. One of them is airside, the other one is landside. But this was not made clear on the map, and this was not made clear to me in the moment. So I spent a bit of time looking around for it, but I then eventually realized the situation and headed to the rest of the airport. I eventually found it later, as you'll hear.
Oh god, this is actually a very large and beautiful parking structure. I just wish it wasn't for parking automobiles. I wish it had literally any other function on the planet. Largely, all of the gates are actually shaped in a C, or depending on how you turn it, a J. But what I'm on right now is a gateless walkway, which kind of bridges the edges of the C in order to provide faster connections between, well, one end of the C and the other, so you don't have to walk all the way around three sides to get one to the other. And it makes sense. A lot of airports do this, probably the biggest one being Dallas-Fort Worth, kind of more of like as a backup for when the airport people mover
goes out of service.
But, way out, no re-entry. So that changes my plans a little bit. So I will continue walking up this connecting side of the square, and then hang a right. No, a left to Delta Gates, and I will pick up the people mover that is airside, and I will ride it all the way to the end of Alpha Gates. Then I will do Alpha Gates and walk all the way back Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta Echo 2. Now the interesting thing about this people mover, if I am correct, it's a Doppelmayr system. It is basically a flat funicular, or more or less an elevator with rails. And that's not to be confused with the Sky Tram, or Sky Train even, I think I might call it, in Detroit, which is literally, according to the state of Michigan, an elevator. It uses the exact same cable haul system as an elevator, just so happens to be on its side. I think it might even use the same door mechanisms, but instead of wheels, it uses hover pads in order to thoroughly confuse regulators and try to prove to them that it uses absolutely minimal moving parts, and it's definitely not a train, it definitely is an elevator. There are a few of these weird little systems in the world. The other major one of note, I think, is the Griffith Park people mover in Los Angeles. They're always nice little gadget bonds, but never really anything that actually is a meaningful transit system. I don't know how I feel about gadget bonds. I think I largely don't like them, because they always lead to the promise of a bigger system and then never, ever deliver on it. I think the closest we have ever gotten is the Walt Disney World monorail, which has 3 lines. That's it. And a top speed of really not much, 45 miles an hour. And then, when faced with the opportunity to expand the monorail, in the light of Rise of the Resistance and Star Wars Land, Galaxy's Edge, whatever, when optioned to expand the monorail to Hollywood Studios, did they? No. They built a gondola instead. Stupid on stilts. So, kind of carrying on with the MSP theme here, they do still have 2 walkways. The main gate access walkway to Plainside, and then they have these moving walkways that are kind of behind all the shops, actually facing the people movers, and facing landside, but it's still airside. And they have that kind of away from where everybody's waiting for their planes. Ooh, lots of construction. Tram to Alpha Bravo Gates. Tram arrives every 3 minutes. That's pretty good. Minimal infrastructure, nothing set up here for heavy maintenance. Normally with these simplistic people movers, one of the two end stations or an area behind one of the two end stations is set up as a maintenance bay. This does not appear to be it.
The tram is approaching the station. Please stand clear of the doors.
Surprisingly small vehicles, but at least they operate on rails instead of concrete guideway. Oh, the wires are operating independently of each other. The one on the left is controlling the other train and is moving very fast. The one on the right controlling this train is only now just speeding up. That's actually very, very interesting. Huh. I would have assumed that, like a typical funicular, they would have been married, but it's fascinating. So I guess it's technically not a funicular. It's a just cable-powered train. Now this is very interesting because it is approaching up ahead. It looks like there is a bypass track, but unlike a lot of other systems, it does not have a station at the bypass track, and it also looks like it has full-on switches. Okay, so it's two sequential stations, and one vehicle skips around the other, and each station serves a train going only in one direction.
The doors are about to close. Please stand clear of the doors. Please hold on. The tram is departing the station.
It looks like this is the last station on the line, and the maintenance bay is just a little bit beyond it. There's an Intercontinental Hotel, which appears that the whole hotel might be airside.
Exit this stop for gates C22 through C27, concourses A and B, and the Intercontinental Hotel.
Okay. Airport transit system done. Head to the right so I can finish. Which terminal is this? I think it's Alpha. It's another beautiful, very tall atrium, circular. Yes, this is Alpha Gates. Heading towards Alpha 2 to 14. Oh goodness. It looks like there's a whole separate concourse out there. Oh shit, it might be an underpass. There might be more to A gates after all. Damn. That might be what the atrium was for. Yeah, this is definitely, while new, it feels like it's a much smaller, much drabber puddle jumper terminal. Yep, SkyWest. Ah, yes, the extremely famous Minneapolis, Minnesota to Syracuse, New York pipeline. Okay, Alpha 14. Oh, that's the end of this terminal. Oh, yeah, so I was right. The gates across the way were Bravo gates. Also, there's a massive pub here, the Blue Door Pub, going down into the underpass. It's very short. It does have digital art, but only on one side, and otherwise it is very dark and just... My favorite airport underpass is definitely Detroit, between Alpha and Bravo Charlie. That is very good. Pre-COVID, one of my favorite airport bars was Fire and Ice at the end of Bravo gates. Now though, I think I prefer, oh gods, whatever the name of that chain pub is at the high end of Alpha in Detroit. That's pretty good. For an airport bar.
That would be the Gordon Biersch Pub in the DIA Wayne County International Airport Terminal near Alpha 76. In a field where airport restaurants get abominably low ratings, the Gordon Biersch Pub has 3.8 out of 5 stars, which is admirably not awful.
Now this is interesting. There's an underground. Oh my. Moving walkways too. What is downstairs? Notably though, no amenities, no restaurants, no newsstands, nothing except seats and restrooms. So I can understand why the node to Bravo Gates was so large and gorgeous and kitted out, because nobody in their right mind would ever want to spend any time here. This is soul-sucking. And in retrospect, I wouldn't quite call this new, maybe 10 years old, both Alpha and Bravo Gates. Bravo 16, and I can't say that I've seen a single departing flight from Bravo Gates. This just must be overflow for the busy season or something. Okay, so the escalators down say that they're going to both the baggage claim and also concourses Alpha to Golf. Huh. Yeah, why not give it a whirl? Came upstairs, see what's down. This is odd that you have two fully duplicative walkways upstairs and down. This is below grade. There's nothing that I can see here that would meaningfully turn this into like a customs walkway, except maybe, I don't know, just like roping off the up escalator for the low price of 2 TSA agents with a stern frown. No, it's fully open. This actually does lead right back to the underpass. So it is a fully duplicative walkway. There's an upstairs to Bravo Gates and a downstairs. Why? Beats me. Oh, there's a completely empty City Point bar down here. Poor Bravo Gates, my god. This is just dead. Somebody did not think it through very well.
Or they just didn't care.
Literally, lights are off. Chairs are on top of the table. It's completely dark except for one airport employee who's sitting, playing on his, I don't know, phone? Beg pardon. Okay. Blue Door Pub, home of the Bluey. Interesting. Charlie 25. For this auspiciously being a train podcast, for the first who knows how long, we've had practically no trains.
Well, Keystone, SEPTA, cable-hauled mini railway under 1 kilometer long.
2.5 more terminals to go. Diverting from the path of the moving walkways, I can see that connector leg of the square up ahead. So going over to Charlie 14. Another large, very beautiful atrium. I mean, aesthetically, I think this might very well be one of my favorite airports in the country because of its consistency. A lot of airports have one or two really fantastic terminals, and then terrible everything else. Examples include JFK, Dallas, LAX, Dulles, Seattle. There are some that are consistently awful, like DCA or LaGuardia. But it is very rare, I've seen, that you get an airport that is not necessarily completely, but largely firing on all cylinders on every inch that it has. The next closest I could say I've seen is Detroit. But here, my goodness, no airport is perfect. But this airport is more perfect. Very, very quiet day, but I guess it is a Sunday afternoon to evening. This is where I picked up the tram from. Hanging a right to Delta Gates. Neat looking bar. Fantastic overlook down the length of Charlie Gates. Ooh, this is a very large, beautiful industrial space. No ceiling tiles, making it more vaulted and pretty. Delta 5 to Pittsburgh, Delta 4 to Baltimore, Delta 3 to Newark, Delta 2 to LaGuardia. Much smaller terminal, but much, much hipper. I approve.
Now, I proceeded to try and find a special feature of the MSP airport, which I have never seen in any airport before, but, as you will now proceed to hear, it was rather difficult to find.
I'm not certain if this is it. In fact, I'm not even certain if I'm allowed to be here. But the internet tells me it might be it. I don't know. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. on this one. I saw this thing on Google Maps of an observation deck. It was in no way clearly designated or signed from downstairs. It was just a simple stairway tucked away in the corner, almost made to look like you weren't supposed to go up it, but it was open. There were no restricted signs. And there's a beautiful 15 by 15 meter area sitting atop Delta gates where you can view, I would say, more than half of the runways. This is actually pretty cool. Not only is it a very quiet and simple place to relax. Why don't more airports do this? It's an amenity for aviation nuts. Fantastic. I am very glad that I trusted my gut on that one. That was really cool. Yeah, there's nothing that says observation deck. It's just a stairway. A very small stairway, too, tucked away behind Delta gates. Okay, almost done. Another fantastic atrium. Again, not much in the way of natural light, but you really wouldn't know it unless you looked up. Echo gates. Last major terminal, and I will have completed the airport. The Terminal 1. Alaska Airlines. Well, actually, Alaska actually used to be the passenger arm of Boeing until an antitrust ruling forced them to split. One of my favorite museums all time, Museum of Flight in Seattle, explains a lot of the story. Yeah, another interesting corner of my life. I used to be a certified docent at the Northwest Railway Museum in Seattle, and that ruined all museums for me forever. I can now only ever go to a museum and observe what they did wrong in curation. Roasting plant coffee. Well, I'm no expert in coffee roasting, but how else do you do it? Echo 13? Echo 14.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Echo 16, I've made it.
If you'd like to complimentary check your bag,
okay.
Please see me here at the podium.
Echo's done.
At 14.
To those who don't know, the NATO phonetic alphabet is chosen such that the names of the 26 letters are unique and cannot be confused with each other if overgarbled transmissions. For example, if you were to make up your own on the fly, pun intended, and say B as in Bob, if it's over a phone or a bad PA, is that B as in Bravo or R as in Romeo? Hence, NATO phonetic alphabet. Not whatever comes to mind. It's like the metric system, but for sounds. I'm up to 5 kilometers indoors, and that's not counting Philadelphia earlier. I should really go back and check.
According to my Apple Watch, I ended up walking 21.5 kilometers that day, nearly 2/3 of which entirely indoors.
Both of these are much smaller airports than I typically do this at. Because so far, I've nearly completed the airport, and we're also at 70 minutes. Again, the normal airport that I explore is on the order of 180 to 240 minutes. This is definitely the main hub of the airport, I would say. Very large food court area on one side, and a bunch of commerce on the other. Minnesota State of Nice. Open Book Minnesota Center for Book Arts. Oh yeah! One of the breweries up ahead is Stone Arch, named for the famous Stone Arch Bridge, originally a railroad bridge, now a bicycle bridge. Oh, and would you look at that? Foxtrot gates. I have completed the airport. Alright, next quest, ground transportation. Here we are. Fun fact, in order to maintain sterility, whenever there is a fire evacuation, people airside will be evacuated onto the airplane tarmac.
Please keep moving forward.
So that they can go back into the airside area without needing to go back through security. Because if they all evacuated the building back to landside, they're no longer sterile. That's the kind of engineering shit that I live for. It also shows us light rail is downstairs. Light rail transit, LRT. Since there's so little of it on the East Coast, it is very satisfying that I will get to experience a proper LRT system again. Aha! This is the other shuttle. The landside shuttle. It's underground, that's why I didn't see it. Okay, both trams go to the same location. Okay, so I will get to do both of them. How neat. This is a gorgeous center atrium in the middle of a parking garage. Oh no, this is I wouldn't quite say proper, but I would say more normal rubber-tired concrete guideway tram, like what you see on the Miami Metro Mover, which is where I grew up, actually. Interestingly, even though it's a different system, a different technology, it's styled to be the same. I wonder why they switched. Oh, it snows here. You want the outside one to be rails, not tires. You don't want snow compaction to ice, that makes sense. Huh.
Please hold on. The tram is departing the station. Please exit for car rental, light rail, Terminal 2, and all airport locations.
Oh, that wasn't really far at all.
According to Wikipedia, the hub tram is 340 meters long. I think you have to walk farther to get to the tram than the actual distance of the tram itself.
Why spend all that money for something you could have walked, or why not just push it closer to the terminal? Light rail transit going down. Pretty sure this is the only transit tunnel system in all of Minnesota. Okay, TVM, ticket vending machine. A go-to card. I don't want a single day pass, I collect the transit cards. There's other options. Go-to card. I don't have one. So far, not blowing me away here. Blue line to Minneapolis in 3 minutes. Instead of most other transit systems, not the least of which being Seattle, where you can buy a reusable, infinite purse value transit card right at the TVM at basically any station, which is also very useful if you use non-light rail buses. Here, it seems you can only buy a go-to card at a physical retailer. So I will somehow have to adjust my plans tomorrow morning in order to make that possible. Another interesting thing, like most American transit systems, because it's stupid here, the light rail does shut down overnight instead of running all night long. But, because it's technically also an airport transit system, one light rail vehicle keeps shuttling back and forth all night long between terminals 1 and 2 of the airport in this tunnel. It's very weird. Long tunnel. Two-car trains, I would say that they are set up for 3-car platforms. Not the longest in the world. I would prefer 4, but even then, I guess once you're hitting light rail beyond 3 cars, it really shouldn't be light rail anymore.
Yeah, I'll make Reese Martin happy and say that there's a trend in North America for forcing light rail to do the job that a heavy rail metro should really be doing. Shout out to RM Transit on YouTube.
That's another problem with using light rail transit for heavy rail metro system operations. It does get a tad loud. But I still like light rail. Daylight.
Fort Snelling Station, VA Medical Center Station, 50th Street Minnehaha Park Station, 46th Street Station, 38th Street Station, Midtown Station, Franklin Avenue Station, Cedar Riverside Station, U.S. Bank Stadium Station, Government Plaza Station.
The light rail heading down a very beautiful tree-lined boulevard with lots of transit-oriented development on either side. Fantastic apartments, old and new. Not quite much in the way of walkable urbanism. No restaurants, cafes, or grocery stores that I can see yet. And a used car dealership, but at least there's housing. Hiawatha Avenue. Minneapolis is one of the best urban park systems in the entire country. I can't wait to check it out.
A recent report found that 99% of Twin Cities metro area residents live within a 10-minute walk of a park. That's truly incredible.
This is a major transfer point.
Oh yeah, there are freight cars about a block to the east. This was kind of built, not quite out of, but in parallel to a freight rail line.
Love your hair, by the way.
Thank you. I like yours.
Thank you.
I was trying to go longer. My company wouldn't let me.
Oh, how dare they.
Kills me. Have a good one.
You too.
Note to complain about SkyWest Airlines, headquartered in St. George, Utah, and their Mormon gender values.
This area of Minneapolis could do with some improvements. The abandoned Acme something factory, literally it says Acme. Nice art of a sort surrounding the power substation. Always like to see that. Ooh, now we're using the viaduct to cross over Hiawatha. Oh my goodness, the Hiawatha Avenue Bicycle Trail Bridge. I think this might even be part of a Midtown Bikeway. I've seen pictures of this. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of bicycle infrastructure in the country. I literally have a picture of it saved with my desktop wallpaper.
For clarity, I have my wallpaper set to rotate every 30 minutes from one of over 2,000 different images, but it is still a fantastic piece of bicycle infrastructure.
Only 2 stops away from downtown. That was overall a very quick trip. Well, I'm generally quite pleased with the speed of the system and how very well protected it is from the surrounding vehicular infrastructure.
As it so happens, it seems that I was riding on the same train as a representative of the Minneapolis Department of Commerce and Tourism.
Boop, boop. Hey, y'all, it's TJP in the building, repping Southern Minneapolis. The Timberwolves made it to a fucking Game 7. We gonna whoop Denver's ass tonight.
And oh man, did they ever. I'm not a fan of sports ball myself, but it was kind of hard to miss over the ensuing few days.
We got a lot of crackheads in the city. Don't do drugs, y'all. But come to Minneapolis. We fun, we lit on a fucking Friday night and Saturday night. Come downtown, get drunk. You gonna have the time of your fucking life. And go Timberwolves.
The dangers of walking around in public with an exposed microphone. But I like him. He was chill and very witty and could think on the spot.
And entering into downtown, curving around the east side of U.S. Bank Stadium, hopping over one of the far too many urban car sewers, though. That's one of the downsides. This city has the most overbuilt urban highway networks. Hopefully a few of them will be decommissioned. Just joined by the Green Line.
There will be a short delay while we wait for the train ahead to clear the track.
The one problem with the interlining. Northern Line in London all over again. Next stop is me. Nicollet Avenue.
Nicollet Mall Station.
That's the Nicollet Transit Mall, as in pedestrian mall. Transit mall, not shopping mall. goodness. Oh, these beautiful old buildings.
Train to downtown
Fantastic urbanism.
on track number 1.
So really, the only time I've ever actually been in Minneapolis was motorcycling through last year on an iron butt. So I have been feet down in Minneapolis, only, on the motorcycle at stoplights. Oh, visitor center, but it looks a touch closed. So long as I don't have a go-to card, I technically can't use a bus. Because, I could pay cash, but I'm not 50 years old, so I need a transit card.
So, skipping quite a few steps here, I spent a very long time looking around for a transit card retailer, but it being a Sunday evening, all of them were closed. Among other things, I think this to be a serious flaw in Metro Transit's operations, because I think that a refillable ticket pass should be available for purchase at any time at any ticket vending machine anywhere on the network, in order to increase access to the transit system itself. Tune in next time to see if I will ever get my hands on a go-to pass, and how I was visited by the magical Metro Ferry.
Ooh, Sioux Line building. I can only imagine who was headquartered there once. So, until further notice, I'm a little bit stranded to my own 2 feet. Not too much of a problem, but I will have to do something tomorrow in order to divert my way to one of these very few transit card vending locations. And there are very few. Like in downtown Minneapolis, there really are only 4. Okay, first observations of the city. Aesthetically, it is, I think, one of the most beautiful I really think I've ever seen. They have done a very good job of just having a good street feel in downtown. Many of the buildings are very neatly and appropriately mixed. In way too many downtowns, Denver, Richmond, Dallas, you have only international style buildings. Things that date from only the 70s, and that are at ground level, faceless, carbuncular, hostile to pedestrians. Outside of the vestibules and lobbies, they are nothing to the streetscape around them. And then when you have only that type of building, it is monotonous and wretched. Here though, it's so much better. You have so many beautiful old masonry brick structures, big and small, that are not just old and quaint, they've also been retrofitted and modernized and updated, some with ginormous, gorgeous windows. But then there are other buildings, modern buildings. The thing that's different here is that most of the new build buildings actually do have street front retail and restaurants and eateries and what have you. They're not themselves sterile. I will admit, a lot of urbanists think that as a whole, for its mass, Minneapolis' downtown and St. Paul's too, they punch below their weight because they have the Skyway, which is basically a more or less private entry mall that is interior walkways, a couple miles of them, that sits a couple meters off the ground, that can only be accessed through private stores, and does have its own private mall cop-like police force, therefore making it less than equitable. And that kind of sucks some of the life off of the street life of downtown. So even compared to other places like Denver, which literally tore down every single pre-1950s building it had except one, Minneapolis still has a lot of work to do. But from what I'm seeing, it's still set up very, very well. The next thing that I noticed is that compared to other places, it has very small and approachable streets. The darling of every urbanist, except apparently me, Manhattan, even there, it has massive avenues that are hostile to the human experience that still need crossing. Here, though, especially in downtown, most of the streets felt small, and human scale, crossable. Like, I would say anywhere from 1 to, at the tops, 4 lanes. Now, of course, nowhere's perfect, and I'm certain that there were a few larger roads that I just didn't notice. But the fact that I didn't notice them on my first few minutes on the ground, actually, how long have I been walking? Somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 45 minutes, that is itself impressive. And then the last thing I've noticed, as you've no doubt heard, oh my goodness, the green space, this is fantastic. So many parks, and they're definitely doing no mow May here. This is a literal meadow. It is beautiful. So far I'm liking this. In fact, when City Nerd first visited, I think he noted that this is the first city to have greenway-oriented development. And another thing that makes this city special, I believe all of its lakefront is publicly owned. Contrast that with Madison, Wisconsin, which I really do not like. Almost none of the lakefront is publicly owned. It's all mansionistas all the way around. And then what little slivers of lakefront is given up for beaches or the Monona Terrace, everybody crowds whenever it's a good day out. But I mean, that is the ultimate difference between Wisconsin and Minneapolis. Wisconsin is conservative capitalist hellhole. Minnesota has standards. Well, that's more red state, blue state. There's no point to living strategically in a swing state if it means you're going to be fucking miserable. Pennsylvania's not bad. That's one that gets the G4 seal of approval. Check there. North Carolina? Clifton. Here we are. I did take a bit of a windy route to get here, partially to experience that greenway. So many birds, my goodness. And this is like in the downtown of a major U.S. city. Hello.
There, welcome. Come on in.
So the bed and breakfast in question much more realistically qualifies as a mansion and breakfast. To my understanding, 300 Clifton was originally the mansion of a local magnate, but it's now on the National Register of Historic Places and operated as a local bed and breakfast, and it's an actually fantastically lavish place. The location was fantastic. The price was incredible. They have a private trolley tour. They even have an integrated gift shop as well. I would really recommend it to anybody. But just, like, honestly, why aren't there more places like this? Like, genuinely asking here. Anyway, after settling in, I decided to head out for dinner and a night on the town, and also to work on lab meeting presentation. Because I'm a scientist, and the work never, ever stops.
Wow, this place. I just simply picked it for its convenient location to downtown and a couple of bus routes there, too. And also price, because I'm very young and very, very poor. Especially for the fact that I'm flying halfway across a continent to ride a new choo-choo. But it's an old 3-story mansion that they've converted into a bed and breakfast and kitted it up inside to be just fully luxurious, really. The first story is just all common areas as if it were fully a mansion. There's a reading room, a dining area, a parlor. She puts out wine every evening between 5 and 6. There's a writing desk with wax seals. And if you leave your letters on the desk, they mail them for you. There are 2 outdoor cats and 2 dogs. There's a gaming area with free pinball and arcade games. I'm just blown away. How can places like that exist? Be cheaper than chain motels? And who in their right mind would ever want to just pull off a highway and stay at a chain? In fact, I don't want to be rude or dismissive, especially of a lot of my other friends in model railroading, but having been to a few events with them, it really is surprising to me, how do I put this politely, how willing they are to go to chains that have existed for a very long time, and that I and other people of my generation would consider to be drab. Both restaurants and hotels, and just, we'll go with everything. It's like, oh please, we're all traveling across the continent, some of us across the world, and really there. You want to take us there. We're all staying there. When there's a thrice more interesting place just down the road. Oh my goodness.
I think I could have put it slightly more articulately. For example, in situations of straight fatigue, say that you are traveling late at night and you only need to pull off the highway and check into a hotel, and all you need is a bed on the side of the road. In that situation, a chain motel does offer a predictable experience. But I will also say that, in my experience anyway, when most of us are traveling, most of the time, we're not in such dire straits. So, going back to the time when I was traveling with all of my friends, we all decided once to go hang out at a chain steakhouse, which is something that I didn't exactly understand, because we were all traveling, in some of our cases, thousands of miles, and why would you want to spend so much money traveling so far away and then have the exact same experience that you could have at home? That does not make sense to me. I, at least, and I think that many others of my generation, would want to have something that's more authentic and regional or local, something less chainy, less cookie cutter. Because if you're already going through all of the effort to travel to a faraway place, wouldn't it make more sense to invest in something that is more unique to the place that you're traveling all of this way to get to, rather than something that is effectively identical to the place that you're coming from? Because going to a chain while you're traveling, that's just a damn expensive way to have the exact same experience you could get at home. And if you're going to a chain while you're traveling, then, well, why travel at all? It doesn't make any sense to me. Make sense? Hopefully I still have friends come July.
So, plan for the evening. The time is 1949. There's not that much to go to eat at this time on a Sunday, especially in this neighborhood, except for one place. It does advertise itself as a pinball bar, but it is a very large space that has a lot of vegetarian options, and it otherwise looks excessively hip, and it has very good ratings. So I think I will head thither and hole up for the evening. Try and bang out as much of the rest of lab meeting as I can.
And that I did. I had a very good evening with a very interesting and fascinating bartender. I had a delicious vegetarian hot dog. I was surrounded by people who were celebrating the victory of the Timberwolves against the somebodies in the sports ball. And I largely completed my lab meeting presentation, which freed me up for the rest of the trip to work on Proto-Future scripts, which means that it was a very productive evening, and I was very satisfied. I had lots of additional philosophical discussions with myself, both on the way to and from the bar, but since this episode is already running very long, I do not think that they are relevant for the moment. I encountered lots of interesting bicycle infrastructure on the way to the bar, in addition to some very unwalkable and unpleasant-looking neighborhoods. But on the way back from the bar, there was one moment worth sharing, which I think is worth closing out the night on.
Another car sewer. An urban river, which can only be crossed with massive bridge edifices. I hate highways. They should all be torn up. Just listen to this shit. Why do people put up sound barriers when they could just take down the highway instead. It is polluting not only with gasoline, but also nanoplastics. A recent study found out that the majority of particulate pollution in the entire country comes from tires and engine dust. Cars are literally the worst thing that the species has ever invented. And that list includes genocide. And we're currently committing one right now in Palestine. Which, by the way, fuck Israel and anybody who has ever supported it. Although, as I go up the hill and get farther away from the highway, I do have to admit, that is a particularly good skyline. I do like the city a lot. As somebody who has been deeply starved of just the concept of a city for half a decade, and who has savored every city I could get my hands on, this, it is a very good city. I cannot wait to explore it more.
And at that moment, with almost perfect timing, I saw my mansion and breakfast and decided to sign off for the evening. This has been Episode 5, Part 1 of the Proto-Future podcast. Inaugural Borealis, Day 1. Keystone, SEPTA, Airport Philosophy, and the Metric System for Sounds. The theme music is Spark of Life by Benjamin Lazarus through Tribe of Noise. I would like to thank my newest patron, Bill Ford, and all of my patrons for making this possible, and especially my parents, G3 and Bethany, for contributing to this journey by paying for airfare. Without all of your support, I would not have been able to, with less than 20 days' notice, fly out on a whim to celebrate a brand new Amtrak train in a city I have barely ever been to. This is definitely the oddest episode of the 4, and with every subsequent day, I settle more and more into my new role as a transit journalist, so I think it will only get better from here. And if you haven't seen what happened on the AML Facebook or any of my Discord or Reddit posts, oh my gods, you have no idea what's coming. I'm blown away by what happened, and I think you're in for a real treat. Hang in there, Pop-Tarts. I'm editing as fast as I can, and I think you'll really enjoy it. If you like what you hear and would like to know more, you can visit the website at www.bgtmrring, that's Bravo Golf Tango, Michael Romeo Romeo, Indigo November Golf, Oscar Romeo Golf, to listen to the Manifesto and Prologue series, watch the Modern Modeling Clinic Anthology, or read the free-to-access Patreon production blog, and please consider donating on a per-episode basis to help defer production costs. This podcast was written, recorded, and produced on the ancestral lands of the Susquehannock, Lenni Lenape, Oglala Sioux, Acta Lakota, Miami, Ho-Chunk, Peoria, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Menominee, and Kaskaskia peoples. I would like to thank them for their historical stewardships of central and eastern Pennsylvania, southeastern Minnesota, southern Wisconsin, and northern Illinois. Thank you very much for listening. Keep riding trains, keep punching Nazis, and keep building a better future.